that one second have Lupin letter to Goa as well as Pithampur Unit 2 sites. Remember, Goa and Pithampur, both of them fairly important plants for Lupin itself. In a minute, we'll have Ekta with us too, but the street doesn't like it, down 4.5%. Ekta, Goa and Pithampur, what does this mean?
Well, actually, this is very bad news for Lupin because the Goa facility, I think, if my memory serves me correct, they had received 3 observations back in March and April. And the management had guided in their conference call that they are expecting maybe some sort of resolution and maybe an establishment inspection report just in a couple of weeks for that Goa facility. So I think this has actually come as a big shock and a big surprise that the Goa plant has been issued a warning letter, because they had mentioned that all of the resolution has been completed for it. They have responded to the US FDA. Now this probably pushes them back a couple of steps, because if I'm not mistaken, they had received 9 observations which they had eventually solved successfully, and this is a negative outcome from the US FDA for the Goa plant for the second time, I think, in the span of around 2 odd years. So this is disappointing news actually coming in for Lupin. It is the most important plant. Goa is actually the most important plant in terms of filings for Lupin. And besides that, even the Pithampur Unit 2 site has received a warning letter. They had received a couple of observations, I think, in the span of June and July of this year. So there will be obviously an impact in terms of new product approvals from these 2 particular plants. But nobody was actually expecting this to take place for Goa. I think the management had multiple times guided for an establishment inspection report. So this is, this also goes to show the unpredictability of the US FDA as well. Remember that this is actually one of the most important plants for them when it comes to the US business. So this is actually very, very, very disappointing news for Lupin. We have Ameya Chalke joining in to talk about this. Ameya, the stock is down almost 9% at this point. I need to jog my memory about those 3 observations for Goa. But had they received a warning letter for those 9 observations earlier as well? And can you put this into context for us?
They have not received a warning letter earlier as well.
Okay, so they had just solved this. This is the first warning letter for Goa?
I need to check. One warning letter was there, but that was back in 2009.
Okay.
So it was very late in history. So
just take us through this news then, because the stock is down 10%. The street was really factoring in a resolution for Goa, wasn't it?
Yes. So we were also expecting the same. And this is really bad news, considering that there are many new product approvals, which are lucrative approvals, are pending from both these facilities. And if those product approvals are getting delayed, then the growth would be a challenge for the Lupin for next 2 years, considering the kind of pricing pressure there in the existing business.
Okay, just tell me more about Pithampur Unit 2. How important is that in terms of the US business? And how much they have contributing from that particular plant, and in terms of ANDAs as well?
So that we need more clarity from the management. At this point of time, what I can tell you is that in FY18, at least from, let's say, from 900 million, at least half of sales is coming from the Indian facilities, basically, which is around 400 million.
Any filings which were...
Okay. Ameya, I just wanted your thoughts in terms of, the Goa facility. If you can jog your memory and just tell us what those 3 observations were about, and whether that actually ran the risk of it probably escalating to a warning letter. If you can just jog your memory back to April.
So those observations, we were really not finding those observations to be really serious. Maybe the justification given by the Lupin was not enough for US FDA to close the observations.
Okay.
That could be the reason.
Yeah. And interestingly, Ameya, Lupin had got a prior approval inspection by the US FDA done in the month of July as well. and that they had said had gone off successfully. So it pretty much had two sort of inspections which had taken place in the span of a couple of months for Goa. And now, instead of an EIR, after, responding to them, there was hope of a VAI or a voluntary action indicated. It's now escalated to a warning letter. So is your fear probably capped at a warning letter? And maybe this can, even go further to probably an import alert?
No, that we can't say it at this point of time, because obviously Lupin has time to respond to this warning letter. So that state will obviously come. If import alert was supposed to be given, they would have given it before the warning letter. So obviously they will give time to Lupin to reply to this warning letter. And I guess I also need to go through the details of the warning letter which is there on the
Yes,
website.
absolutely. That point is taken. I just want to just highlight that, it's only Pithampur Unit 2 which has received a warning letter. We haven't, it hasn't been Unit 3 or Unit 1, which was successfully audited, according to me at least. Can you, do you remember how many observations Unit 2 had received of the Pithampur facility? And what the nature of those observations were?
So I need to go and check again, because there were many inspections which had happened in case of Lupin over last 6 months. So I need to check that. But I guess what we need to remember is that Lupin has started filing important products from 2 facilities. So that de-risking facility should help them in such kind of a situation, in my view.
Just tell us about the key filings from Goa as well as Pithampur Unit 2 AMEA, and if you can tell us whether they did mention that there are site transfers already taking place?
So site transfers are taking place. More than that, they are filing from 2 facilities, which will lower their impact basically if such kind of thing happens. So in terms of filing, only management will be able to guide you that what kind of products they have filed from each of these facilities.
But which were the important approvals that you were factoring into FY19, which I'm assuming will now be delayed because warning letter, new approvals will get delayed, right?
So there are a couple of FTF opportunities like Ranexa is there. Then there are a few ophthalmic product approvals which are expected. So then there are obviously Renvela, Renegade kind of a product opportunities which are becoming more competitive, but still significant opportunities. So these kind of product approvals are there from this facility.
Okay, well maybe we should just try and pull up the warning letter which Goa had received, so that will just take a couple of minutes to do so. But what's your sense now in terms of FY19, because the management said that FY19 is largely going to be a year of consolidation in any case, AMEA, simply because of the pricing pressure that they're facing in the US markets. When they gave this guidance, they hadn't really factored in any sort of escalation for the Goa plant at that point in time. So are you going to be revising your estimates lower for FY19 and maybe even FY20 now?
See, new product approvals were really important for the Lupin, considering they have these 2 Fortamet and the Grumexa, which are contributing significantly to their profits and are expected to go down further in FY19 because of increased competition. So obviously, if there are no new product approvals which are coming in FY19, or the lucrative approvals are getting delayed because of warning letter, then obviously FY19 estimates we have to factor in all those changes, and those will have to be downgraded basically.
I just want to reiterate for the viewers as well, AMEA, and you can come in on this, that Goa has always actually been a sticky issue for Lupin, because at one point in time they had 9 observations, then they had a re-inspection which had got 9 additional observations by the US FDA. They had managed to solve those first set of 9 observations successfully. They managed to solve the second set of 9 observations successfully, and this is around 1 or 2 years ago. And after that they had a re-inspection which took place in April of 2017, where they were issued these 3 observations. So it seems as though Goa has always been a prickly point for them. And before that, I'm going to get Vikas into this as well. Vikas, it seems as though Goa has been the pain point for Lupin consistently.
Yes, absolutely. It only shows that it remains pretty unpredictable. And Goa being one of the big units for Lupin, it will definitely have a dent in terms of supplies to the US. They've already mentioned that, you know, the product approval, the rate of product approvals will definitely get impacted.
Okay.
Yeah. So in their statement, they have written that we are deeply disappointed to have received this outcome, and while there is no disruption of existing product supplies from either of these locations, there will be likely a delay of new product approvals from these two facilities.
Actually, what this does is, you know, it takes the sheen of the whole pharmaceutical sector itself. If you take a look at all the other stocks, pull up something like a Glenmark Pharma, that one too has tipped to the low point of the day. From the frontline space, we have Dr. Reddy's and Sun Pharma. Just recently, we saw some traction come by in the pharmaceutical stock.
You know, now
in
in fact, the stock is down around 13-odd%. We're testing 900 rupees for Lupin. Because, you know, it just goes to show the unpredictability, because the management has consistently guided for an EIR for Goa. They said they were so confident about Goa, and now it turns out that they've got a combined warning letter. I think this is also important to put into context in terms of the other USFDA issues that other companies face as well. That you cannot say that something is clear till there is some certainty.
Absolutely, because, you know, the positive surprise came from Sun Pharma on Dadra. That you know,
observations.
without any future inspections required, they cleared it. And then this one is the other side, where you where probably the company gets constant indications that things have gone well. It ultimately turns out to be very difficult to predict. So, you know, there have been so many rumors in the market all through these GMP inspections. We have to tread cautiously on.
So then what does one make of the management commentary? Because if I take a look at the Lupin management commentary, they said they had received a pre-approval inspection in July itself. In the con call, earnings call also, they said they are pressing.
That's exactly what we're saying, that, you know, if you respond to the US FDA and you get a response from them, you think that your response is sufficient enough to solve the problem at that point in time, but you don't know which are the issues which are standing out at that point. And I remember that there were a lot of analysts post those 3 observations who had pointed out that, you know, this is not going to be a VAI issue for Lupin. Even though it's 3 observations, it is going to take them time because of the nature of those observations which had come up. But because anyway, US is around 35-40% of Lupin sales. FY19, they had anyway written off because of, not written off, but they had said consolidation because of price pressure. Now the things have probably worsened at this point. This is probably the worst case scenario which is turning out for them.
Very much. I think this is probably something that they would not like to happen, and their dependence on these sites and clearances was actually moving in a positive direction. This will definitely be a setback. This is not something that we had expected, because the narrative had actually changed, and we had started believing, you know, what the company was telling us all through, that there are some very clear indications that things will change. So, you know, it's definitely not going to bode well for the company, and probably also for the industry.
I think I'm just still trying to pull up what exactly you know, the 3 observations had looked like at that point in time. But Vikas, if we can just jog your memory for it. It was all the way back in April. I remember the gist of it. But still, at that point in time, do you remember what people were saying about Pithampur Unit 2 as well as Goa? And again, Goa is the most important facility for them.
So exclusion was about no data integrity. You know, that's something that we need to, you know, tick mark very clearly. There was no such reference, to the best of my memory. I think most of it was seen as procedural even at that time. You know, the things that are related to out of specification kind of things. It all looked pretty diluted, and must have been something much more deeper on finer investigations by the US regulators. Otherwise, US, I mean, going by what they have been doing in the last couple of months, we didn't expect a warning letter.
Yes, absolutely. Well, 3 observations which had come in, go ahead.
Yes, so yeah, it's a secular fall for Lupin at this point.
I think I've managed to pull up the warning letter that was, or the Form 483 which was issued to them. I just want to go through it again, because that was the one which has created a problem, where they did mention Vikas, that, the observations included control procedures not established, which monitor the output of manufacturing processes. Plus, they had mentioned that there is failure to thoroughly review any unexplained discrepancy and the failure of a batch or any of its components to meet any of its specifications, whether or not the batch has already been distributed. And I think I remember having a conversation with you at that point about this unexplained discrepancy rising, I think, in other issues as well.
Yes. So, these are the shortcomings which probably get US FDA thinking on those discretionary lines. Nothing is really carved in stone, because it all depends on how the particular inspector has filed the report to the headquarter and how the headquarter has actually seen these loopholes.
So what is the way forward now? Like the company management will be probably giving more commentary. We'll wait to really speak to the management on the way forward. But what is the process now from here on? What could be the timeline for more clarity, and if at all a clean chit later?
Yeah, so sure. So I think about 15 days is what is given to the company to come back with remediation plans. If those remediation plans are suitable according to the US FDA, they will decide on the future course whether they need to okay the remediation process or whether they will need to do another re-inspection.
And, one more question which I think maybe an expert could also answer is that does this change the view of the US FDA towards the particular facility because of the repeated kind of issues which have come up for that particular plant?
Yeah, that's a very important subject. On repeated failures of agreeing to do what the US FDA wants in terms of compliance is not a very good sign. We've seen in the past Wockhardt actually defaulting on that quite a lot of times when they have actually come for inspections twice and the same errors have come up. It definitely doesn't look like, the FDA will like that.
So Vikas, concerns about US FDA issues have been looming large for most of the pharma companies in India. Prakash Dewan joins us on the phone line. Prakash, Lupin has really lost 150 rupees in the last 15 minutes of trade. How do you see this particular stock and the reaction to the big news and the disappointment which has really come in?
5% to open up on the circuit. 79 is where the bottom is, but I don't see any respite given the fact that the results, quarterly results that came out told us the US
Prakash, we've got you on a bad line. We're just going to try and reconnect you. But now the stock is down around 16% and I just want to bring up, what a Credit Suisse report had brought up when the Goa plant had come out. And I remember that we had received the 483 first at that point in time. We had put it out and they had written a note based on our observations. At that point, they had said that the first observation, which relates to failure to review unexplained discrepancy and failure of a batch to meet any of its specification, this could be an important observation in their view and could delay approvals for Lupin by up to 3 to 6 odd months. Observation 2 and 3 related to SOP deficiencies and should be rectified. Observation 2 was lack of written procedures for production and process controls. Observation 3, control procedures which monitor the output of manufacturing processes are not established. Now, just to go back, Goa was last inspected before April 2017 in March of 2016 and received an EIR in November 2016. So it was an inspection which had taken place in less than a year. And the Goa facility is over 50% of US sales. It has 25 to 30 pending ANDAs, with the key ones including Nexium, Renagel, Renvela and Welchol. And Lupin had guided for 20 plus launches in FY18. So this is actually very important to note in terms of the first observation, which might in fact have been the clincher, Vikas, because of that particular escalation which has taken place. Prakash Dewan is now back with us. Prakash, the stock is now down 15% for Lupin. It's sub 900.
No, absolutely. So, while we are celebrating the anniversary of the demonetization announcement, that day Lupin was about 1500. So from that, people need to realize how non-compliance to US FDA regulations can cause such a lot of damage. My worry now is that whether the company can come back into the normal functioning after this body blow. The results very clearly showed us a simple thing that the US was struggling. They were struggling in the US in terms of pricing. Now, if they are not able to get back to the US thanks to this second inspection and warning for the next 18 months, they will be absolutely, it is virtually impossible or close to impossible getting market share back from the competition.
But
now,
Prakash, exactly that. One, they would probably be, they would probably be pressured because of warning letters. But we've seen other companies come out from it successfully and manage launches, etc. We've seen that with Moraya. We've seen that with Divi's as well now.
Yeah.
Do you think that the combined body blow of this plus pricing pressure in the US is what is probably going to drive earnings much lower in FY19? And if you had to revise your numbers, how much would you probably revise it by?
So I would take the U.S. revenue completely off the radar now. There is no, I wouldn't pencil in any kind of revenue coming in from there. They will have to now completely focus on whatever markets that they have managed to be good at or okay at. So Latin America, the domestic market, there have been slight, slivers of benefits coming from these geographies. Lupin will become a pan-US kind of a company now, so it will hardly be any presence in the US which is significant. It will probably focus on CIS, it will focus on Japan. So my sense is they will have to re-look at the geographies itself, and the earnings could probably come down at least significantly by about 25-30% by FY19.
Prakash, and I wanted Vikas's opinion on this as well. Vikas, we were just talking about this, about how Indian companies are now focusing inward as opposed to the US.
Yes.
Do you think that maybe Lupin might be a candidate to do so as well? We just heard Sameer Mehta of Torrent say that, India is double digits.
Yes. In fact, Lupin is very well placed to do that kind of a play. Some of the large companies have been contemplating it, and Lupin has been smart in actually getting global companies to align with it in terms of partnerships and all. So we've been discussing that, the priority market, as Mr. Mehta had told us in the morning, probably will shift back to India till the time, because 15% growth is not bad in a market which is predicted to grow at about 50 billion by the turn of the decade. So for now, I think, all the shining will be on the India market itself.
All right, Vikas as well as Ekta and also Prakash Dewan, thanks so much for that exhaustive analysis on Lupin and the disappointing, news really coming in on that one from US FDA concerns. With that, we are completely out of time on Business Lunch. But remember, this talk is on our radar and we'll take it forward in Mid-Cap Radar, which is coming up next. Markets at the lowest point of the day, and that's something to watch out for as well.